everybody, welcome to Write with Celia. This video is going to be my author story, how I started with a sticky note, an idea, and ended up having a book of my own called Grandma's Magic Blanket. Back in first grade, my teacher told us to draw a picture of something we really liked, and at that time I was listening to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis on tape. And I absolutely fell in love with the story, I absolutely loved it, so I decided to draw Mr. Tumless from that story. And from then on, it was a steady slide up of my drawing. And even as a child, I would draw pictures and then I would add a story to it, or I would do stick figures and add a story to my stick figures and create this whole world of stories with my stick figures. My stick figures are pretty awful, very cringy to look at now, but that's where I began. I began with really sad stick figures and funny stories, but that's where my imagination came from. That's how I grew to the author I am now. Fast forward to after high school. I had a 9-to-5 job and I didn't have all that much time or energy to draw, so I started writing my stories more. I started focusing on the writing and less of the pictures, but it was all up here. If I had a printer for my imagination, I'd have about 50 books done by now. During this time, a family friend came and asked me if I could illustrate one of his books. He's a new author and he started writing books for his students to explain American history better to them through illustrations. And at the time, I had never touched actual comics or anything like that, like making them, but I thought it would be a fun experience and I decided to go for it. He said, "Do you want to take the book and do my illustrations?" And I said, "Yes, let's give it a shot, see where this goes." I don't know, I want to say 6 months later, I had all the illustrations done and it was exhausting. It was such a new world to me that I had to figure everything out from scratch. I didn't have a whole lot of resources at my fingertips at the time, and I was still learning so much about illustrating, period, that it was really a lot of work that went into this first illustration. But when I was done with it, I was so proud of my work and I had learned so much. The author must have liked my work because he came back with his second book and asked me to illustrate it again, which I said yes. During both books, mind you, there was no money. I didn't get anything out of it but the experience I took from it. And that was a great teacher because it was so much work putting these books together. I had to illustrate the pictures. There were about 32 pages in each book. And I made the title page, I made the end page, and I created all the illustrations for every single page. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of time and hours spent on making these illustrations, and I had to color the whole thing too. But at the end of both books, I had seen how much I had grown from the first time to the second time, and I really learned so much valuable stuff came from those experiences that I ended up thinking a lot more about what I would do if I was an illustrator, if I did my own book. What would I change? What would I write about? And it really got my brain going towards the children's book world because I knew if I was going to write a book, I'd want it to be a children's book. Fast forward to 2019 September, a coworker of mine at my 9-to-5 job had just announced that she had published her first children's book. We were all super excited and proud of her, but I started thinking, how did she do this? How did she make that happen? I emailed her, I congratulated her, I was so proud of her, but then I asked, how did you do this? If you don't mind me asking, how? Like, share your world with me. I've been trying to do research and nothing has been helping. So we became friends and she started telling me how she became an author. She let me know about these things and that thing and all this stuff that I didn't even know existed in the author world. And she opened a whole new world and actually was the reason I started my journey as an author. Before I knew it, I had an idea, I had written it out, and 2 weeks later I had the story completely written out and I had drawn out all the illustrations for the pages I wanted. And it was amazing to know I had been able to accomplish that in 2 weeks, but I wasn't done. I had so much more to do. In fact, I didn't even know where to go from there. But my author friend stepped in and really helped me out here, and it was an amazing experience being able to work by her side and actually see all this author world come to life. 6 months later, I had my first children's book in my hands, my physical book in my hands, and it was one of the most rewarding, amazing moments. This is my project, this is my book, it is mine, and I finished it. It's an amazing experience. I was like overwhelmed with emotions. It was awesome. I didn't tell my mom anything about it, but I wanted to surprise her for her birthday, which was in March. But at that time, I was trying to get my book completed and published as soon as possible. So I gave it to my mom for an early birthday present, and she loved it. And I enjoyed writing this book. I dedicated to my mom because a lot of it is based off of my mom and things that she does for the grandkids. And that's why it's called Grandma's Magic Blanket, because my mom is a grandma. Definitely at the end of this process of making my first children's book, holding this book in my hands, I really had to go back and think about all the frustration, all the time, energy, the focus, the problems that came up when I was making this book. And I really was like, why is making a children's book such a pain at times? Like, if you don't know what you're doing, which I didn't, it's awful. I mean, I didn't know where to go. I was researching so much at that point. I was on YouTube, I was on Instagram, I was on Google. I was looking, researching all I could about children's books. And it didn't even start with children's book. First I was like, how to become an author. And I was like, okay, what specifically am I looking for? A children's book author. And then it was like, you have all these options that you can have to become a children's book author. And I was like, okay, how much does it cost to become a children's book author? Because I have a 9-to-5 job, but I also pay rent and I pay my bills, and I don't have a whole lot of spare cash on the side. So I was looking into that, and the numbers were overwhelming. I was like, how do you become a successful author when you're dishing out all this money? And what if you don't have that money? How are you supposed to achieve anything when you have nothing? So all these questions were turning in my brain, and I was overwhelmed at the very beginning. And then my author friend stepped in and showed me how she did it. And that helped so much, and I was able to do so much because of her help. If you want to become an author, you have an idea, or if you don't have an idea, you just know there's a story inside of you and you want to become a children's book author, that is why I've made this masterclass. I made it for you guys. I made it because I know what it's like to be in your shoes. To have an idea, you can literally picture it in your mind and you're going, I want to make this a reality for kids. I want children to be able to read my book and love my book and be able to know that I wrote a book specially for them. That is such a beautiful gift. That is such a beautiful thing to want to bring to the world. But it's so difficult doing it when you don't know what you're doing or when you don't know where to begin. You might have all the time and all the money in the world, but if you don't know where you're beginning and how to get to where you want to go, it's kind of hard to get there. That is why I made the masterclass, and that's why I want to invite every single one of you to join me on this masterclass and make your book a reality.